morning and you didn't get time to type quickly enough or the discussion moved on, then just note it in the Google Doc, come back to it. We're going to keep looking at that to get a sense of where people want to go next. One distinction that we're going to try and work with today is our sense is a lot of charities have got very short-term urgent problems about how to function as a team online. Would that be a fair assumption? A nod or a wave? Okay, so some are doing okay. Well, I guess you're all on this call, so you're probably doing pretty all right. But we know that's a pressing problem for a lot of charities. So we think the best approach with that is maybe make contact with me initially, because we're going to be compiling some resources on the SCVO website on the kind of very practical how to keep the show on the road questions. But what we'd like to do today is have a slightly wider discussion, as Ross said, of what does service delivery look like in a remote setting. So maybe it's worth me now passing back to Ross to talk a little bit more about that, and then we can just go out to more open discussion.
Yeah, thanks, John. That was really useful. Yeah, so the polling information. What I'm going to do just to keep things simple for everyone is just kind of talk about the things that we kind of covered in the poll, because I don't want to overcomplicate things in this call. I think initially it'd be good to get an understanding of the digital service delivery areas for your beneficiaries that you'd like to explore and the ones that you're struggling with. And I think if you could put some of the questions around that into the chat, and then we can maybe get Irene to kind of pull some of those out, and then we can kind of bring you in to give some more context. So in terms of that, what I'm thinking about is, do you traditionally deliver face-to-face counselling? Do you have an information, advice and signposting service? Do you run groups with older people that come together once a week? Do you run youth work sessions? So that kind of level of detail, and I guess that's where we've kind of found at the moment the information's kind of missing and nobody's really joining up the dots of how we do that. So just be interesting, Irene, I don't know if there's anything coming at the chat around that about the kind of specifics of what people are struggling with and how they're taking traditional face-to-face services digitally.
There's nothing come up. Oh, Jack has just asked, how do we get consent online where normally you would ask people to sign a contract?
Yeah, okay.
Any questions that have just come up?
Yeah, so I just addressed that. There's a very boring bit at the end of that Google document, but in many ways it's probably the most important bit, and we're trying to gather up policies and guidance that covers a whole myriad of kind of issues. So things like, if you're delivering one-to-one services with young people and you do that in a face-to-face setting, what does that look like online and how do you do that safely? And even like some of the concerns we've now got where it's not just about delivering it digitally, it's about privacy in a household where there's now maybe 6 people when traditionally that younger person might have done it on their phone in their own time. So we're trying to gather up any kind of policies, and that kind of stuff is really, really important in terms of just putting people's mind at ease, but just making sure that you're safe and legally compliant as we kind of do this stuff really, really quickly. So if there's anyone in this Zoom call who's doing some of this stuff already, and even if it's literally you have a Word document that's on your shared drive, if you can even just put it in to say, I am John from X charity, here's my email address, we've got a Word document that covers this, we can get in touch with you, and then we can kind of we can upload that and openly share it, and then people can kind of use that and adapt that kind of stuff. We've tried to pull in, so last night I kind of pulled in some examples, and there's other stuff in there, and just that's kind of quite clearly categorized by type of service in that Google Doc, so we can kind of pull that in. Anything else, Irene?
Sorry, just have to unmute myself. I was just firing you over a wee message. There's a few people mentioned that they're supporting young people in particular, and also moving core services to remote working is that a real challenge for people, and so it's looking for advice in transitioning services really clearly.
You're on mute, Ross.
Classic Zoom error. I did this in a call with Scottish Government yesterday where I made a really important point and then was like, yeah, you had that on mute for the entire time. So yeah, this is good, isn't it? Right, so what I was saying was there's going to be people in this room of 100 who are doing some of this stuff already and have possibly been doing it for years. And I guess what I'd like to hear from now is if you've been delivering any services digitally, kind of if you can share some of your experiences around that and just how that's going to help people in the room and how we can pull that into that Google Doc. So does anyone want to kind of share that? You can put your hands up if you want to kind of talk just now. Or is there anything in the chat? Oh, sorry, John's going to come in here.
Sorry, I feel a little bit bad just jumping in, but just to maybe give a sense of the example. So we run a digital checkup service. So people do an online self-assessment and then they can book a phone call. And we use a really simple tool called Calendly with that. And what that does is allows the person who's taking the service to book a time slot that works for them. They get an appointment in their diary. We get notified about it as well. And we find that a very smooth way of allocating time slots, because often the challenge with a virtual service is setting the boundaries of when it's open and closed. So we'll link that as a mini case study on our website. So I won't go through the massive detail right now, but it's just a quick example of a small tool that can help it work more smoothly. And just very quickly on the point about consent and privacy, the ICO website is a really good resource, but in general, the golden rule is anytime you're capturing data, have a statement there that's explaining what's going to happen with that. So we'll add more links later on in the Google Doc, but that's the first principle to keep in mind is, so any user using your service should know at each point what's going to happen with their data.
Yeah, it's a really good point. The other thing I'd like to bring, sorry, Irene's got her finger up there. Do you want to come in?
I was just bringing up, there's a few questions around supporting existing community groups through live streaming and similar solutions, which is certainly something that we've been doing using sort of Facebook and, you know, finding the right platform when there's such a myriad out there. But the question was, or the person talking about their expertise was around starting to look at how to deliver to groups of people who are meeting anyway in the physical world and now delivering that at distance.
Okay.
I'll go back on mute.
No, it's okay. Yeah, so yeah, it'd be good if anyone wants to talk a wee bit about the kind of platforms that they've got issues around or that they're thinking about using, but they have a lot of questions. It'd be quite useful to kind of tease some of that stuff out as well. So particularly, I mean, right down to the level of detail of, you know, is WhatsApp Messenger the thing that's being talked about in your office a lot at the moment? Are you doing one-to-one video calls with people? Are you starting to do more group work online? So I don't know if anyone's got any kind of specific questions or thoughts on the tech side and what you're struggling with. Any hands up? Anyone coming in the chat? Okay. And the silence of 100 people is deafening.
There's Pauline. Pauline's got her hands up, and Daffod down the bottom.
Yeah.
Daffod.
Okay.
Is that me to come in?
Yeah, go for it. Thanks.
Yeah, basically, I'm from a small charity in South Wales called Skills and Volunteering Cymru, and we usually run about 30 or so outreach projects working with vulnerable members of the community. So that's adults with disabilities, people with mental health conditions, young people, and most of them are social and kind of communicative support in a face-to-face context. Obviously, we're having to move the bulk of that online. There's 2 points. One is that we're looking at compiling a database at the moment of various resources from both local and all over the country, which at some point we'll be happy to share. And also we're just trying to assess which platforms might be that people have used that they would think would be useful. Obviously, like, we're quite new to things like Zoom, Google Hangouts. If anyone has any recommendations of ones they found the easiest, that would be much appreciated. I'll mute.
I'm doing it again. If you've got a point, I know. If you've got a point you want to come in, then just unmute. What I'm trying to do at the moment is manage the waiting room, which now has about 50 other people in it who want to join the call. So if you want to talk about a specific tech platform that you're maybe struggling with, then if you want to jump into the call just now, that'd be useful. So just unmute yourself and come in.
Rory?
Yeah, Rory, do you want to come in?
So one of the things that we're struggling with at the minute is that we are really trying to like run towards remote working. As a housing association, we haven't really planned for this sort of thing. We haven't any sort of team-based collaborative software in place. So we haven't Teams, we haven't got Slack. Most of our staff are using WhatsApp at the minute to talk to people in little groups. One of the things that I'm really struggling with at the minute is that we are potentially moving towards Microsoft Teams, and we've been looking at it. My wife is also working from home for a local authority, and she's on Teams. Teams is moving to, I think, 44 million users now, and it is so slow at the minute. For all these sorts of features they talk about, being able to conference call, being able to talk to other people, we're finding it really difficult to access our documents online through OneDrive, access conversations with other people, to send documents to each other because of the amount of users that are at the minute. And it's made slightly worse by Microsoft offering it for free for the next couple of months. It's I think the users are going to go really high.
Yeah. Yeah. Is anyone else experiencing that and finding that at the moment? The other people? Yeah. I'm amazed that Zoom has kind of remained fairly stable throughout this, which is quite astonishing. Yeah, it's quite remarkable. I think one of the, actually, Rory, I don't know if you want to talk about this, but just one of the really simple things, and I guess when we're trying to gather up examples of what people are doing. So Rory, I'm right in thinking that you guys have made the internet access like open, and you've kind of given people locally the code so that people are digitally excluded. They can basically be outside your building and access the internet. Am I right in thinking that?
Yeah, so we've done that with both our office building and our community centres. We've put just signs above our shutters that you see these are the Wi-Fi passwords for here. But we've also been involved in a kind of local digital forum for the last couple of months. So we've been working to collate all the kind of free places for Wi-Fi in our local area. So we've been sending that to tenants as well. A lot of our housing staff are now remote working, and we're doing a lot of welfare calls. So we're phoning our tenants just to check up and see how they are, and digital and being online is part of that conversation. So all of our housing staff are now letting tenants know where they can get free internet and free Wi-Fi. It's part of those calls.
Okay. Anything, Irene, anything interesting coming in from the chat? We're on 67 in the chat now, so it'd be good to know if there's anything interesting out there.
I think there's definite themes starting to appear around safeguarding in particular, so that issue is coming up quite a bit. The practicalities of supporting a group at distance, and discussions around platforms in particular. So what should we use to do this, and what's best, especially for people who are primarily offline.
Yeah. I don't know, Irene, if you got anything to add in terms of, because obviously digital inclusion is a huge issue here.
I think what we find is that one of the best things that you can do is try and work out what's accessible to that person and what family members and things are using, because we're finding in the middle of this kind of dramatic emergency situation that the connection with family and friends is the most important. And things like online shopping, which are super important, are actually more terrifying right now, because you don't want to show someone how to shop online and discover there's no online delivery slots and stuff like that. So we're discarding a lot of that just now, and looking primarily at safe information sourcing, and also what platform is best. So that's why we've ended up using a total myriad of platforms depending on that individual's social and community setting. So that might be setting up a video through Facebook Messenger, through a group call through that, because lots of people don't even know that they can do video calls through Facebook, or it might be WhatsApp video calls, because people also want to see each other more than just have a WhatsApp group chat. So it's trying to work with people to find out which platforms are working best. But that's just what we're seeing. Dan's got his wee finger up, so I'm going to go on mute so that you can say something exciting, Dan. Hold on.
Sure, your finger's not wee, Dan, but yeah, let us know.
Thank you. So just to build on that point, Irene, that's brilliant. We're seeing lots of reasons to link up with what we call proxy users, so family members who are connected, who can then help provide or deliver that support. At the moment where that's quite difficult, one of the places where that's really an opportunity is there are loads of incredible community groups that already exist on Facebook and WhatsApp that you can discover quite easily, see how you can engage with them to help you create that last distance to the people you're trying to support if they're not already online. Just two other things that I think really kind of build on what I've heard so far, which is just wonderful. The first is when you're thinking about putting your service online, try and think about what the absolute essence is of that service. So although we want to move everything online, of course we do, it's sometimes just kind of the very smallest bit of it we need to make sure is there. So for example, when we think about youth centres, it's not all the activity and the play and that kind of stuff we want to put on there, it's just the ability to have that connection with some other people of the same age, or that ability to have that conversation with a mentor or a youth worker, and just focus on the very, very focused kind of part of the service. That's one thing, just reflect on what's the most important bit. The second though is to try and think that through from their perspective, like what are their needs and their reasons to come to the centre or come to their service. A really lovely example with youth centres, with children's centres last year, was we thought the service was about people coming together to use messy play and to kind of join other parents. But the real kind of need there was actually helping kind of share some of their concerns so we could link them up to food banks or to other services. So that was kind of like, what's their reason for coming to the service? And then the final thing is, what tools do they already use, whether it's WhatsApp or Facebook or anything they're familiar with, that should help guide to the platform or the product that you can use to deliver that service in the best way.
Yeah, really, really good advice there from Dan. I think, yeah, can't overemphasize that enough, is like you need to pivot to what your users are using. And this kind of, I guess, kind of old school model of charity IT procurement is just out the window now. So, you know, as Irene said, that might be a mix of WhatsApp, it might be Facebook Messenger, it might be a live chat on your site. But how do we make this stuff all work together? If you're not able to access your users at the moment and really get a good understanding of what they're using digitally, the Department for Culture and Sport and Office of International Statistics have got pretty good UK-specific up-to-date stats that are broken down demographic around the platforms that people are using. And that can be a really good way of kind of sense checking what you're going to be using. The one thing I would say is WhatsApp is the most actively used app in the UK at the moment. It's overtaken Facebook. So when we're thinking about what is a single platform that universally cuts across ages and demographics, WhatsApp is pretty much it. And we kind of almost need to get over the fact it's owned by Facebook and yeah, all the kind of big issues with big tech firms at the moment. But actually that's the platform that people know how it works and are comfortable using it. Pauline's got a point she wants to come in and make.
Hi, thanks, Ross. Yes, WhatsApp is very popular. Also, Facebook itself, where community groups tend to have their websites, kind of a presence. And Instagram, a lot of the groups I'm dealing with are doing live stuff on Instagram. So I think we need to get our heads around that as well. Small Charities Coalition is receiving tons of calls all day. So this work is really needed. I was wondering about, is it worth trying to map everybody on this call? If you just share our postcodes, we can see where the coverage is of this, because I'm assuming from this 100 people, we have some clue and we can be a resource for each other.
Yeah, so the Google Doc link, which is in the chat, so if you click the chat box, so it's the kind of little kind of speech bubble, if you click that and open it up, the Google Doc is in there kind of multiple times linked to, and we can kind of pull people's names into there and keeping up to date on Twitter around this. I guess just to reinforce, so some people have joined the call kind of fairly recently, we just say this is not a one-off call, so we're looking at something similar to this happening next week where we can bring people in, because there's a bunch of people who just haven't been able to get in because it's been limited to 100 people. But also, as John said, this will now kind of start to splinter off where we can see very specific types of need. And some of that is going to be at a really, really kind of niche level. So, I mean, one of the things that's coming up, so speaking to Anne Callan, who works for the campaign End Loneliness, and talking about the fact that now you have families who might have been fractured before and who are forced to stay in a household, and actually the impact of that on so many levels is huge, and we need to be thinking about how do we gear up, you know, mental health services and relationship support services to be able to deliver a lot of their services digitally. And having worked in that world previously, I know for a fact that 95% of them do not do anything digital. So, you know, most counselling services don't offer digital counselling, even though the technology is really simple. So we need to do rapid work to think, how do we get relationship counsellors basically into people's homes and working with people, because the potential effect of this is huge. And I think for me, that's the thing, is like part of it's the tech, but part of it is we need to thematically group people together to collectively think about what this is going to look like and share best practice so that we can deploy stuff really, really quickly. Anything else coming from chat, Irene, or anyone else got a finger raised that they want to kind of...
I'm trying desperately to keep on top of the
John's got
there's one of the questions that's coming up all the way through, or not all the way through, but there's been a lot of people asking about Slack, because a lot of us use Slack every day. So there's a definite shout out for, can we help with Slack, I think.
Yeah, John, do you want to pick up that and make your point?
Yeah, sure. So very happy to help with Slack or its competitors. So the other day I just had a chat through another charity about that. So just book 15 minutes with me and we can go through it. The other practical point I was going to make is a kind of a combination of tech that I think would probably be very helpful for charities now, is using a WhatsApp broadcast list so that one message goes out to a large number of people, plus Google Forms. So that could be a very quick and very simple way of capturing input from your service users about what they need. And in the process, you could capture some consent for that as well. So you can have a very simple form that says, what do you need help with right now? Are there any barriers to accessing stuff online? And within that, you could also have the question about, we're hoping to use online webinars. Are you okay with that format? So you could do some very simple work then to gather some information from people. And I think, I don't know if Ross already mentioned it, but WhatsApp for Business is quite a good tool if that's on one dedicated phone, because you can do things like have auto replies or categorize threads by type of support needed. That's another step there. A final thing that I think a lot of charities are needing to get to grips with is, if you're not in your main office, your phone line. And a really absolutely basic housekeeping thing is, if your main phone line is out of reach, get your website updated or get your contact page updated so it's really clear how people can make contact with you. There's loads of very quick to implement VoIP tools there, so you can do a straight swap of all your old numbers to mobile phones. That's very easy to do. So I'd really be focusing on that, because I think that service users are going to be struggling to know how to make contact with you. Ross.
Yeah, I don't know if I need to put the finger up when I'm the person hosting it, but I'll do it anyway. I'm going to bring in Jackie Dunbar after I've made this point, because she's had her finger up for a while as well. I think some really important points there, John, is like, and I've been harping on about this for years, but seeing SEO and your website as a service, not as a marketing tool, but thinking about people are now going to be making very desperate searches online. And where are you appearing in that search? And when they land on your site, can they get the information they need or do the thing that you want them to do? And this sounds like really basic stuff, but so many charity websites are basically, we deliver a service, here's how we deliver the service, without thinking, how do people self-help? Or is there a simple contact form on that actual landing page where someone can get in touch with the right person directly, rather than it going to a generic inquiries email address? So just giving some thought to how your site is performing right now and how people are going to be using it, and making it much more user focused rather than kind of service or project focused. And again, if that's the kind of thing that you want help with, or you want to chat, then put it in the document or use the form that's in the document, or get in touch with me or John, and we can kind of help with some of that stuff. Right, Jackie, do you want to come in?
Hi everybody, just to let folks know that we have used ye.com, and we set up a dedicated telephone line which allowed our children and young people to be able to call us free of charge when we were looking to recruit board members for our Hearings Our Voice. It costs about £3.49 a month, and you can actually choose a telephone number and you can download the app onto your phone, and it will automatically call through into your phone. But the good part about it is you stack it with credit, and that means that anybody that needs to phone you would actually call you, and it's a free phone for them. So I just wanted to point that out as ye.com, YAY.com, just in case it's helpful for anybody, just when we're talking about the issue around about telephone lines and stuff. So
Yeah, we can put that in the document. We can put it in chat as well. So that was yay.com.
Yeah, Irene stuck it in there. Thanks, Marie. Cheers.
That's a really good one. Yeah, so there'll be a lot of, I guess, tools like this which are not the things that are the norm, but actually are going to help you deploy this stuff really, really quickly. So the more of these that you've got, then do feel free to share. I'd also be interested, I don't know if there's any kind of particularly small charities or community groups in the room, but I guess one of the concerns I've got is the kind of smaller charities who haven't made that move to the cloud yet and now have all their client files in an office potentially they can't get access to right now. And I guess what that's going to look like for people. So I think in part of this, there's maybe a need for smaller organisations to rapidly move some of their back-end functions to the cloud. And John and I are quite keen to think about how we do that. And whether that's through G Suite or Office 365, I think for the smaller groups, that's a bit of a concern. Just a wee housekeeping thing, if you've come on the call, because there's a couple of new people come in, if you can just unmute your mic and then we won't get any background noise, that'd be great. Okay. Irene, is there any other stuff going on from chat or anyone else wanting to speak?
There's a point there from Dan that Dan maybe wants to say, because while we're all flailing around, I think Dan's bringing an organised way of thinking. Dan, can you maybe reflect back the point you've just made on the chat pane?
Yeah, of course. Thank you. I love the idea that I'm organised. Thank you. So one of the problems we have to do with any digital service is make sure it links into people's existing behaviour, particularly right now where people are panicking and not sure how to access support. And so, and we don't align with behaviour, and all the efforts we put into it just won't get used. So one of the ways we do that is we kind of just twist the way in which we describe our service from this is the service we would describe to a really simple, consistent format, which is as a young person, when I am worried about where I'm going to sleep tonight, I need to speak to someone who can advise me so that I can find a safe place to sleep. And that format of as a, when I need, so that, is just a consistent format that we always use just to make sure we're always focused on the perspective, from their perspective, and figure out how we respond to it. And it's one of the reasons why that we often create are really small, with the needs and behaviours of people who are supported.
Yeah, okay. You went a wee bit echoey towards the end there, Dan, but I think we got the kind of gist of it. Just to kind of reiterate Dan's point there, so that I'm a person in a situation, the kind of 3-step process that he spoke about. So the gov.uk site is basically entirely built on that principle, and all the content is framed around that. So we can kind of share that in, but it's a really simple way when you're trying to bring very remote teams to think about what does this look like and how do we deliver this. It's a really good way of doing it. So we can put that in the document. We can kind of share it in the chat. Yeah. Okay. Any other points?
There's a couple of points in about purchasing data plans for supported young people.
Okay, has anyone got experience of that? Was that a question that came in, or was that a kind of point of someone doing it, or a question that came in? Okay, well we can add that into the document as well. So the call that I was on last night with the Scottish Government, so Louise MacDonald is looking at a lot of these big issues, particularly around digitally excluded young people in Scotland. So if you're a Scottish-based organisation, there'll be a lot of stuff coming out. But I mean, Louise and the Young Scot team publish all that stuff openly, so any of that kind of advice or kind of best practice coming out will kind of get openly published, and we'll kind of pull that into the document. I guess it's worth saying as well that this call, the point of this is for us to get a feel on what people are struggling with and start to kind of join up the dots for people. And then that document acting as that kind of structure of where we go next and that understanding. But as John said, there is very kind of clear next steps. So there's the kind of 15-minute calls with John. John and I are available if there's any more kind of in-depth work that you need to kind of think through with your organisations. We'll be populating that Google Doc with examples, and if you've got any that you can put in there, and that'll be live all the time. It's worth saying as well, if you know other people that have got their own toolkits, we're not precious about the content in there. So if people want to kind of lift examples out and use it in their own toolkits, again, that's totally fine. But just to say there's a kind of ongoing structure around this. So although, this is a kind of frantic Zoom call with 100 people in it, this is really to get a feeling of what are people struggling with, what are the kind of tech barriers, what do you need to do next, and then for us to think about, well, how do we deploy that. And I guess just saying that there's a kind of UK-wide effort. So Dan's from CAST, and CAST are doing loads of kind of work in the space as part of the kind of catalyst. And then Irene from More Collective and John at SCVO. So there's lots of work going on right now rapidly to kind of support people. So I guess for anyone who feels like they're struggling, there is going to be a point of contact, and there are people who can help you with this stuff. John, I don't know if you've got anything to kind of add to that about the support and kind of where we go next.
Yeah, well, just on the particular point, I guess it was the safety question relating to risk of fraud, or was it to do with physically getting vouchers to young people? Hannah, I think you had one question. You may need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, no,
yeah,
I was.
Is that me now?
Sorry.
Hi. Yeah, we run a collective of young artists, and they're most of them, obviously don't have a lot of money, and we're worried. We usually meet on a fortnightly basis and have our committee meetings, and we support them in so many ways, emotional ways, obviously, not just arts careers ways. So my colleague Rachel, who's also in this call, hi Rachel, came up with a great suggestion of topping up, because a lot of them don't have internet at home and they're just accessing it on their phones, and obviously it'll run out. But I just have no idea how to go about that. Obviously we have a debit card that we use for the organisation, but I can't give out those details. So any suggestions, because I want to do it, today. I just don't really know how to go, what I should do.
Could you, if it's like a dozen or so, could you like buy a bunch of pay-as-you-go vouchers and send them? But I guess you need to know what networks they're on.
And that's a good idea. We've got a WhatsApp group, so
Yeah.
I think it is only 5 or 6 people that have requested it at the moment. That might increase. Yeah. So I could literally just post them out vouchers, do you think? Is that what you do?
I mean, that would be the thing I would do if I had to do it this afternoon. And then that at least gets something happening, and then you can see. Just on this broader point about the inclusion angle, because it's such a huge area, I posted a link in the chat because the conversation that Ross is alluding to about this broader angle of people who are already facing barriers to getting online, it's going to be so much more difficult for them. So there's a big call to arms launched by the Scottish Government, and the big picture vision for that is a kind of emergency program to basically get everybody equipped and supported to be online. And that could be as radical as thousands of people having a device that's supported by the government. We need to wait and see where that goes. It's a very early call to arms yet, but I'd encourage you to look at that blog on our website, because the piece that charities can contribute to this is the insight about what's going on in people's lives, because this very bold vision of let's do this really quickly and solve this problem in a kind of concrete way, that needs to be informed by how people lead their lives. That's going back to Dan's point about understanding what your users really need to do. So please do hook into that conversation. On the bottom of the blog post about the digital inclusion ambition, there is a link to a Slack group, so you can join those very rapidly growing discussions about how we can get from that kind of problem that Hannah's got today, which is we've got service users who've got barriers to being online, to try and make that solve for the whole country.
Yeah, really good points there, John. Yeah, I think one of the things which we're quite conscious of is there's actually almost an overwhelming array of support and advice at the moment, and how do we make sure that people don't feel swamped and can get the stuff that's actually right for them? So, and again, I think we've kind of given a bit of clarity to that in that Google Doc, and where possible, we've linked off to stuff that is not what we're trying to do through this very specific programme, which is about digital service delivery. So things like managing remote teams and homework and that kind of stuff, we've kind of linked off to some best practice in there. Just say Dan's point about kind of user focused and that kind of 3-step methodology, I put a link to that in the chat. So if you want to explore that in a wee bit more detail, that is in there. John's point he made about Scottish Government and that kind of call to action, so that blog post. So I was on a call with Kat McCauley at Scottish Government last night, and they're looking at ways of getting devices to people who are in most need and who are most likely to end up isolated. So that kind of over 70s group who might be in the house for months at a time now, but who are also the group who are least likely to have digital skills. So there's some work going on there about kind of almost 3 strands about getting devices, getting them the skills to actually use the device, and also the kind of connectivity that sits around that as well. So the Scottish Government are doing work pretty rapidly in that space, which is really exciting. I don't know what the volume of that's going to look like at the moment, but it's pretty positive. So that's quite exciting. Okay. Any other points anyone else want to come in with? Whether it's a question or whether it's a statement or sharing best practice.
If I can give a very mini best practice example, I think a lot of organizations right now are putting up kind of emergency updates about service provision. And a really common way that people do that sometimes is putting an image of a document on Twitter. And I'd say, please don't do that, because that's inaccessible to a lot of users. An easy way to do it in a more accessible way is put a link to a Google Doc on view only, or a Word document on view only. So that means that's something that all of your team can update. You can have quite a lot of content in there, but that's much more accessible to people who are using visual assistants with browsing.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, so yeah, I guess not letting accessibility slip where we're trying to get content out really, really quickly. And I guess just going back to that point that I made earlier is when we're talking about services, it doesn't always need to be a complicated piece of tech. It might just be the content that's on your site and the approach on your site, and making sure your site is more user focused. It needs to be what someone in your team is really working on right now. So I guess not getting too bogged down, and we need to come up with some very complicated technological solution that we need to now deploy. Okay, any other people in the rooms? There's 95 of you. There's bound to be some other, I guess, questions that people are struggling with, or specific examples. Okay. I guess just a question. Oh, sorry, someone had their finger up there. Jenny, do you want to come in? Jenny, you're still on mute. There we go. Hey.
I've got a quick question. Obviously, we're talking about using platforms people are already on, but my client group are elderly, stroke, head injuries. Has anybody got anybody up and running with that sort of less familiar with technology group and used a specific platform they've found that they've got on with, or that it's easier for them to access?
Irene, I don't know if you've got any, or Pauline potentially maybe, or maybe Dan, about thoughts about kind of specific groups who are not using technology at the moment and maybe need quite intensive support around that, and what that's looked like.
I'm looking at that with Bobby Robson, who's offering some help around that, but we're kind of still evolving stuff. I'm looking at stuff now around refugees. You know, refugees, when they travel, always have a mobile phone. You know, we need to make sure, I think, everybody we're in contact with has a mobile phone. Borrow it, you know, buy a cheap one. We need some kind of basic kit, and everybody should be able to get something like that. But that's all I can suggest for right now.
And from my point of view, Ross, I think one of the things that comes up quite a lot, Jenny, is when you're working with vulnerable groups, so you sort of mentioned folk with brain injury, is it's quite often their care network has kind of avoided engagement with digital with that person as well. And so they're doubly isolated in this situation because people have been trying to keep them safe by keeping them offline, and now we need them to go online. So I think, again, coming back to the point I made earlier. I mean, the question about safeguarding is really one of the biggest themes that's coming up on the side, is what do we do about the young people that we provide support for, or vulnerable people who are vulnerable in any way is a thing. But I think in the sort of examples you're talking about, it is about finding that there isn't one platform, I don't think, Jenny. I think it's more that you need to look at that person's social connections and go, okay, so if their family members are using that whatever that platform is, you know, Ross is highlighting that WhatsApp is the fastest growing one, then let's use that one, because it also makes it easier for that person then to receive support in the current context, because the person supporting them who's not used to doing that can go, okay, but I know how to use WhatsApp. That is the thing I use all day. So mum, can you see what I can see? And it makes that support and that distance a wee bit easier. But I don't think there's an easy answer, Jenny, and it's one that we're all really worried about.
Yeah, thank you. That's helpful.
I'm just going to comment on there as well.
Can I just quickly ask, is anybody from Young Scott on the call? Because I'm sure this is an area that they have some expertise in.
I don't know if there's someone from Young Scott, but we can loop them into kind of future calls, and we can get them.
Because they're both very experienced in youth work and do a lot on the online space as well.
Yeah.
So what I'll do is I'll make contact with them, and if I get back some detailed guidance on that question, because it's a really, really good question, we'll get that back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The other thing as well, I mean, if you work specifically in youth work as well, it's kind of going a wee bit off tangent. One of the links which we put in the doc is the digitalyouthwork.eu, I think it is, site, which has got some kind of best practice and case studies and stuff around specifically digital youth work. So that's in that Google Doc under the kind of case studies stuff. One of the things that I think as well it's worth just considering when you're talking about this stuff in your teams is deploying the technology and understanding your users is one part, getting them to actually use it and know what it is and where it is the other bit, and that potentially is the most difficult bit that we're talking about here. So for me, there's that, I guess, that bigger notion of needing to go where your audiences are, which for a lot of charities is very out of their comfort zone. So we set up camp in a Facebook page or Twitter account or Instagram account, and we kind of push content out and we kind of hope that someone does something with it, but actually how do we go to where those people are? And that might be that there's a local Facebook group that you're not a member of and you need to get membership of it, or it could be there's a health forum on Health Unlocked, or it could be there's a campaigner that talks about a really specific issue that your charity is involved with, and now you need to build a relationship up with them so they can push information out about the services you've got. But just that fundamental notion of knowing where your audiences are and getting information to them quickly. A couple other things within that, if you've got a Google AdWords grant, is just thinking about what ads are you actually delivering at the moment, and you might need to change those ads very, very quickly to do some of this stuff and get the right information to people. Also, if you've got budget for Facebook ads, I would encourage you to do that to try and reach some of these groups in your community, even if that means breaking into reserves. The one thing I would say is Facebook ads at the moment are having a slowdown because Facebook's team is much lower and there's much bigger demand. So we're seeing Facebook ads deploying much, much more slowly than they traditionally would. So just keeping that in mind, if you're going to do that stuff, probably need to do it fairly quickly. I don't know if anyone's got any other points, even just best practice or stuff that you've done in the past about trying to reach your specific audiences in the places where they're going for information, or the networks that they're part of, and trying to tap into those. Anyone got any thoughts on that or advice? Oh, Dan's got some points. Do you want to come in, Dan?
Thanks, Ross. I think one thing we can all do today or before the weekend is to reach out to any of our community who we can contact and ask them where else they're looking for support, or where else they're aware of discussions taking place that relate to relate to the work that we do. There's a really incredible opportunity here. I know there's lots of chaos, but one of those is to help build the services with the people who need them and to invite them in to help participate. So many people want to offer help, and helping you get your work to those who need it most is something that people will lean into. So if you've got 3 or 4 people who you know well enough to call, or who you have their email addresses for, just reach out and say, tell us where we need to be so that we can help kind of provide the support, and use that then. And as soon as you get kind of 3 or 4 people coming back saying that there's this Facebook group, then go and join that Facebook group and see how else you can engage. But that first thing is an opportunity to just really quickly, low-fi, low-tech, just contact 3-5 people and see if that can help you point to where your community are, and then that will give you an indication of which kind of platform to scale up with. And just to finish that off, if the answer is a platform you're not familiar with, be it Zoom, Facebook, or WhatsApp, or whatever, then there's some amazing people on this call in this group. Just say, look, how on earth do I engage with WhatsApp? And collectively we'll figure out how to do it as quickly as possible, and we can share some resources back.
Yeah, really, really good points there. Yeah, so I mean, that just really, really simple stuff. And I think that point about 3 to 5 users, so when we're talking about this stuff, we're not talking about doing stuff at massive scale. It can literally be 3 to 5 people who you can either sense check some of this stuff with or do some really, really simple user testing with them. We're not talking about complicated stuff here, but to make sure that this stuff is really fit for purpose and is meeting those user needs. One of the things which we're going to try and pull together within those resources is just like the specificness of these examples and really drilling it down. So for example, we put in Catalyst Housing Association down in England have got a fuel poverty service which they now run on WhatsApp. So literally, the same model that we were doing before, where you phone up and in 2 weeks' time you get an appointment and you take a half day off your work and you come, and they probably spend most of it on the phone to Npower. You can now have that same service on WhatsApp, and services like that now are more vital than ever. Like people, there's a danger some people might be getting their electricity and gas cut off because they can't afford to pay bills. Like we're talking about like properly life or death stuff here, and it's not, for me, it's not good enough to not have those services now. We need to think about how do we get them to people really quickly. Okay, right. Any other points or questions from the chat? I'm just going to say as well, Andy McCann is in the chat, and I used to work with him in Govan, and there he is. Do you want to wave to everyone, Andy? Hello, not seen you for ages. Okay. Darren's got a question, and then we'll get Keith on as well. Okay, Darren, do you want to come in first, and then we'll get Keith?
Hi, yeah, can you hear me? Yeah. Oh, hello. Can you hear me? I've unmuted. Yeah, cool. Okay, sorry. All right, good. It's just that I can't hear anybody else. Sorry, I've got a wee baby with me. So one of the things that we're doing at the moment is we're trying to figure out, we've got a makerspace with £100,000 worth of kit, laser cutters, 3D printers, and it's like, oh crap, what are we going to do because nobody can access it now? So it was a bit of an issue. So what we've decided to do is a blended approach, because obviously we've got, the reason why we have a makerspace is because young people don't have access to internet and technology, hence that's why we built it. So what do we do now that that's no longer an option? So what we're doing is we're doing a series of interactive touch casts. So it's a bit like a YouTube channel, but it's interactive content on screen. But what we're also going to do as part of that blended approach is that we're going around all our members that we know who do not have a device, and we're giving them a Raspberry Pi, a microbit, a laptop, or anything like that, so is that when we're online, so it's a bit like the JSA thing that you saw at 10 o'clock where they do a video. We're going to do a series of videos as well on stuff that we would already have carried out at the makerspace, and then there'll be some interaction live through the TouchCast platform that some of the people might not be familiar with, but they'll have the tech there in the house and actually to carry out the task and the activity. And so one of the things that we're looking at is the equipment, and it's very interesting about the point that you had made about the government and about, there might be some way of, issuing out technology or devices. Predominantly it will be for 7-year-olds, but we're looking for a way of getting donated technology and laptops and stuff, and we can recondition it and fix them up if they're a bit broken, and then we're giving these out to all our young people across Renfrewshire who do not have that like a laptop or something at home that can at least access the internet. We're also going to be running, we're quite well known for coder dojos, and we run them through the library system, through the libraries and some of the community centres. We're now doing a platform with Coder Dojo worldwide, because you can run Coder Dojos online and code clubs online quite easily, which I was pleased about. So we're going to be running that as well, so is it to try and maintain as much of the services that we had at the makerspace, and how do we now do that either from home. The only problem with all of this is the Wi-Fi. So it's not going to be so much the technology for us, it's about, do young people or households have Wi-Fi and there's nothing that we can think way around about that, because we could pretty much do everything else and duplicate everything we do at the makerspace, but if they don't have Wi-Fi in the house, we're scooped. So that was basically it.
Okay, yeah, some really good points there, Dan. Just to pick up on that, just say Dan works for Paisley YMCA, and they've been doing amazing stuff in terms of digital, just generally across the board. Dan, can I ask, can you put, so the examples that you gave there, can you put them into the documents? I think for some people on this call and just broader youth work sector, some of that stuff's going to be totally invaluable at the moment. So, sorry, someone else had their finger, Keith had their finger up, and then we'll bring in Rory. So Keith, do you want to come in just now?
Thanks, Ross. It's just more of a reflection, really. There's, I think the conversation has moved on now, but looking at the text chat and the things we've been talking about, there's a slight tension between, on the point of like keeping in touch comms tools. I can see a lot of points about how can we use existing software like Facebook and WhatsApp or something more safely or more securely or more confidently. And then there's a lot of separate questions about, well, how can we get involved with Slack or Teams or something that's new and perhaps, in my limited opinion, you know, a bit safer and more secure and more appropriate perhaps. And I can just see a tension between these two things. I don't feel qualified to answer that question personally, but I just wonder if anyone had any reflections on, is it, yeah, is there a better practice way to go down either of those two routes?
Okay, I'll pick up some of that, and then maybe someone else, or maybe John's got a point in that, but I guess almost, and I think we need to be quite crude in terms of how we group some of this stuff, because we need to do it quite quickly, but almost thinking about part of this is internal comms and how you come together as a team, whether it's volunteers, your board, or your staff. And then part of it is how do we deploy services really quickly to individual beneficiaries, and almost just really crudely trying to separate those two things out. Now, sometimes they might share the same platforms. It might be you have a group of volunteers on WhatsApp and you provide one-to-one information and advice pushed via WhatsApp Business, like John said. So that might share that same platform. But I guess just getting people in that mindset of there's something around kind of collaboration and homeworking, but there's also something about how do we provide frontline services digitally now. I don't know if you've got anything to add to that, John, because I know that's a very crude way of looking at it. But.
It's a good point. And I think the other reflection that I would maybe add to that is one thing we're seeing now is that user needs are probably changing daily. So charities are very good at kind of, I think as you said, Ross, building a nice model and then assuming that can stay the same. But this feels now a time where somebody's got a massive priority need today and that will change tomorrow. So charities are going to need to be super agile about the way we keep up with people. I think on Keith's point about which platforms, I think if it's people beginning to make contact with you or beneficiaries, I think it's got to be the platform that's right for them, and you've got to work around that. I think if you've got a volunteer group or staff where there's maybe more confidential organizational data, yes, of course, use something more established. But I would say I would only do that where that's necessary. So like, if I had to organize in my neighborhood tomorrow, I'd probably be using a WhatsApp group and a Google Drive. You know, it would be as simple as that, because otherwise you end up spending time running people through something that's not familiar and you're not really adding much value in terms of features. So I think I would go with the most minimal tech you can go at any point.
Look, can I just ask, just for housekeeping, there's a couple of new people joined the call. If you can mute yourself, and Darren, if you could mute.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. As cute as your baby is, if you could mute, and then I think we're going to bring in Rory. Had a point, so we'll bring in Rory just now.
Hi, folks. So one of the things that I'm most concerned about in terms of our digital inclusion work is that we've been using digital inclusion as part of a kind of holistic community development approach, which is centered around food provision, around social isolation, around addiction support. So we potentially have some really chaotic, hard to reach tenants who aren't necessarily going to be able to afford electricity or gas or food in the next wee while. And it's almost like digital's getting shelved while we try and kind of deal with these major issues. One of the things that the association's been really focused on at the minute is about this food provision. So we've been doing a piece of partnership work with Salvation Army and a couple of other third sector organisations to fund local food provision to go around Govan. And so it would be in a different place every day that people who are in most need can get fed. From my thoughts around this call, I think what I'm going to try and do as part of that is get some sort of mobile hotspot data thing attached to that food van so that people know there's data they can go and access should they need it. We'll maybe try and get some of our lending library devices with phone minutes and text as part of it as well, so if people need to contact people in an emergency. But I'd be really interested to know how other people are maybe working with those people who are the most hard to reach, that are in the most deprived areas, and how we try and get digital into meeting some of their more basic needs.
Okay, so Irene's got her finger up, so Irene's, I think, got a point to make on that.
It ties into, I can't remember if it was John saying it as well, Rory. I think one of the things that we haven't really mentioned, we have a wee bit, but it's coming back into what groups are those people members of already, and sometimes going through those trusted groups. So they're quite often members of existing Facebook groups, for instance. Even though they have low digital skills, they'll sometimes be in those sort of safe spaces, groups and community groups. We're certainly seeing a lot of that in Highland, is that the existing Facebook groups are where we're able to help people with digital and start getting in contact with them, because they know the basics from there, but they don't necessarily know how to access that wider thing. So it's just a wee thing.
Yeah, it's a really good point, Irene. Yeah, and again, just that simple principle of knowing where your audience is and trying to go to them. Okay, any other points from people coming in? If there's not, I just had two very quick things I just wanted to kind of, I guess, get on your radar and also get a sense of what you're doing in this space. So it would be good from people in the room to get a sense of where are you bored with this. Do you feel you're bored, or are you bored anywhere? Are you bored leading on some of this stuff? Do you have someone on your board who's leading some of this stuff, and what does that look like? So I'd be really interested to kind of see what's happening around that. And the other thing is around funders. So just to kind of point to the fact that if you're in Scotland, SCVO have a specific landing page about basically every major funder's guidance at the moment on COVID. And that page is really useful because it means that whatever your funding streams are, and for some of you that may be 6 or 7 different funding streams, there's clarity and guidance on what you can do with the money that you've got from those funders. And speaking to most funders right now, there is a huge degree of flexibility, and I think you need to keep that in mind. So what you're not delivering is 75 counselling sessions in a room where someone comes at an appointment. You're delivering the outcome of that counselling session, and I know that's obvious, I know you all know it, but it's just keeping that in mind. So when we're talking about this deployment of services, this isn't about going and sending an email to Lottery and asking for permission to do it. It's like we need to do it rapidly, or people are going to lose out in this. You don't have the week to wait until a grants officer's spoken to their manager to come back to you. And I sit on the board of Impact Funding Partners. I used to sit in the grants committee of Foundation Scotland. As funders are all amenable to this, and this is about providing something for your beneficiaries, not about saying what was on that grants form. So I can't emphasise that enough. But if you want that clarity about your specific funding stream, that page on the SCVO site is really good. And I'm sure NCVO's probably got something for England and Wales that's kind of similar as well. Has anyone got any thoughts on that, I guess, so that kind of board leadership stuff, and then about your kind of funders and your relationship with them and how you spend that money? Any points? Anyone see any? Oh, Darren's got his finger up.
One of the things I was going to ask everybody on the chat was, our board at the moment, obviously, by a lot of youth workers to deliver frontline, and that's no longer an option. So people are coming up to their fixed term contract end dates, and they're kind of looking at some of the possibility of not renewing that. It was just to find out, in terms of other boards or other organisations that are on the platform at the moment, are they looking to let go of staff? Is that a real possibility? Because I've got some of the guys, our ethos and aim is all about supporting young people as a YMCA. We've got 16 and 17-year-olds that we employ, and some of my board members are like, well, it's a business and things are happening now, Darren. So there's a real reality there that if we've got a 10-hour contract or a 15-hour contract to deliver, youth work in the evening time or the weekend, that we may have to let them go now, because if they can't deliver front line, then what's the point in employing them? And so part of the emphasis and the urgency of us delivering an online service or doing the hybrid model that I was talking about previously is also about keeping people in jobs for us, because we don't want to let them go. So I'm interested to hear what the game plan is from other people on that, and also what their boards are. Our board are an ageing board, they're in their 70s and 80s, so we're not having board meetings anymore because they're all in the high risk category and they're not going to be showing up because obviously it's an unnecessary risk to them. So again, it would be interesting to find out if other people have got ageing boards and how are they, because they're not going to do a Zoom. Some of them don't even do email, so they're no way going to be doing a Zoom. So we're not having board meetings anymore. So heck knows where the leadership direction's going. So it's a bit more about, for me, just going ahead and doing things and asking for forgiveness later.
Anyone got any thoughts on that? John, you want to come in on that one?
I'm very much in agreement with a lot of that, and I think that one really good approach is to do some test and learn. So do that at a very short-term pace. So like a really quick example we'd heard earlier was talking about posting out mobile phone vouchers. Ordinarily, you might risk assess that to death and say, well, what are all the implications? But I think we're in a space now where you can try something small and then get some immediate feedback on it. So I think in particular, your point about demonstrating the value of online services, I wouldn't be waiting weeks to try and build something difficult. I'd maybe just try and look for quick ways to try and do it in a prototype fashion. And then the two things that gives you is one, insight about is it actually going to work or what you need to tweak, but two, it gives you an example to share with a funder so you can say, well, look, we did this and the users found it valuable.
Yeah, really good point. I think Rory was maybe going to come back in. I think you had a point there as well about that question. Maybe not. Maybe Rory's gone. Okay. Anyone else got any thoughts on that? Just about kind of board and leadership, and then I guess, I mean, the main thing we're talking about here is how do you allocate resources to this stuff, and what is that looking like? And has anyone had any difficult discussions around that? Or does anyone feel that they're not well placed enough to, I guess, make a decision where you're taking something that's traditionally a face-to-face service and now you're doing it online? Or are we all just now just spending money however we want? And yeah, Hannah's nodding with agreement there. That's good. Excellent. Okay. It's actually interesting, and I don't know if other funders will follow suit, but William Grant Foundation, Lisa's going to come in a wee second as well. William Grant Foundation have now converted all their grants to unrestricted funding and basically saying we trust you to do what you need to do with that money. It'll be interesting to see if any other funders kind of follow suit in terms of that. But again, just keeping up to date on that SCVO page, you'll be able to see what your funder's doing. Right, Lisa, do you want to come in? You need to unmute. That's my classic mistake. Well, no, you're still muted, Lisa. You should have a little microphone icon. If you click on that, I can see you're on an iPad, so I don't know what it looks like on an iPad. Okay. Lisa, do you want to stick the question or the point into chat, and then Irene can pick it up and Irene can kind of relay it to everyone? Does that make sense? Yeah. So once you've got that, Irene, stick your finger up and we can bring that in for everyone. Cool. Okay. Any other thoughts on any of that stuff around kind of resources and leadership? Like Kate Hogarth, do you want to come in?
Hi, I think I've managed to press the right button. We're a funder. We run the Short Breaks Fund for Scottish Government, which is for breaks for carers. And one of the things that we do is micro grants through carer centres. So we distribute it on our behalf, and carers can access up to about £250, £300 to get a break. So that's completely changed in the past few days because carers are caring for lots of people with vulnerable people, complex needs, and aren't able to access it. So what we've done is ask them just to be as flexible as they need to be in terms of what carers can use their grants for. So we will be funding things through the Time to Live, like Netflix subscriptions, online resources, magazines, exercise, all that sort of thing that people could actually get in their house. So it's just, as a funder, trying to think how can we deliver the same service but in a different way that's going to meet the needs of our stakeholders at this time. And yeah, so so far the feedback's been really positive. We're just trying to think of ways which we can support carers. I think the point you made earlier on, Ross, about people who are actually vulnerable in fractured relationships, you know, we're really acutely aware that the long-term impact for people in carers who can't access short breaks, you know, that is going to emerge over the next few weeks and months. So we will need to be adaptable to what people need, and providing information about things like online counselling and or telephone counselling is going to be crucial. So if people are aware of those sorts of services that are available, be really interested in hearing about them, so we can share that as well.
That's brilliant, that's excellent. I know as well, actually, Sally Dyson, who John works with at SCVO, has been speaking to the funders forum, so collectively working with the funders to think about what does this look like. One of the things I'd quite like funders to do, and I think they've done it in a kind of roundabout way, but is to just give a really simple collective statement that says, we trust you to know your users, and actually the point of how you deliver services is not the most important thing, and if you now choose to do some of that stuff digitally, we trust you to be able to do that and know your users well enough to do that effectively. Irene's got a point, and then we'll bring in Pauline, who's got a point as well.
It was just to come back to muted Lisa from earlier on, who was muted on her iPad, bless her socks. She said that she's got a younger board just now who are all really busy, understandably, with their own problems and issues right now. So what they've done is sent them the plans to go online, and they're waiting on feedback. And the biggest issue is just trying to work out the best platforms, which is an ongoing theme, isn't it, like that we're hearing today, and how to fund it.
Pauline, do you want to come in now?
Yeah, for my sins, I'm also chair of the West Midlands Funders Network, and we're going to meet next week and contact all our funders and get all their details about what they're doing. A lot of them aren't online themselves; they don't use email, so we're struggling with them as well as, you know, our kind of beneficiaries. But we're going to put all the information from them on our website, so at least everything will be in one place for beneficiaries of those organisations, and hopefully that will help to channel people. But, you know, getting trustees and getting administrators of funds online as well is another struggle. But I think we need to prioritise the struggles, and for us, for me and my business, it's the beneficiaries on the ground, people who are struggling day to day to get toilet paper and basic, you know, supplies and stuff. People are still coming to outreach services. How do we make the users and the volunteers safe with each other? They're going to visit each other anyway. They're not going to not be in touch. How do we make sure that they're as safe as they can be? You know, what's the best guidance around that? And we're developing some guidance around that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I think the other thing I've put the link into chat, and it's also in the kind of top of the document, is there's a form which John and I will have access to the kind of back end of, where if you've got really specific support needs, then ping it in there, and then we can kind of deal with that as they come in. Someone in the chat has asked where will I find the Google Doc. We can post a link in the chat again. Also, the tweet that I sent out in that thread has the link to the Google Doc as well. Has anyone got any other bunch of time? And everyone's probably got like 42 other Zoom calls lined up today. So are there any kind of final questions or points or thoughts before John and I just talk again just about next steps and kind of reinforce what's going to happen? I don't see. Oh, there we go.
Sorry, just one more thing. I know I said it earlier on about mapping who's here. If people just put their postcodes into the Google Doc where they're from, I can do a quick map just to give us some sense of solidarity that, you know, where people are from, because I'm not sure. I'm in Birmingham. A lot of you are in Scotland. Just to build up a sense of where people are from, so that we can kind of feel not so alone.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think, you know, obviously there's a kind of Scottish focus because I'm based in Scotland and most of my clients are, and Irene's based up in the Highlands and John works for SCVO. But I guess just that sense of something that's best practice that's working in Birmingham is going to work equally well in Dundee. So there's no preciousness about this only exists in Scotland. So just, I guess, keeping that stuff in mind. And what we can do is John and I can also triage off. So if you're a Northern Ireland based organisation and we know that someone in Northern Ireland is doing really good work, we can kind of signpost you into some of that stuff. So yeah, so don't worry too much about, you know, where are you based and what's your funding stream or any of those kind of things. That's kind of out the window at the moment. Okay. In terms of next steps, so there's a Google document which has, as we discussed, trying to gather up the best practice, trying to gather up policies so that you're doing this stuff safely. It's got a link to a form at the very top of it. So if you've got some really specific support that you need, you can ping that off and that'll come to John and I, and then we can think about how we can kind of best support you. In terms of next steps, we'll probably have a call like this probably early next week, because there was a couple of other 100 people wanted to come on the call, but they couldn't. So we'll kind of keep the momentum going that way. The other thing which John and I have been speaking about doing is thinking about where does this kind of thematically go next. So if we've got 56 people interested in WhatsApp Business and understanding the functionality of that and what that might look like, we can have a call like this that is specifically on WhatsApp Business, and we can bring people in who have got experience of doing that. If it's about some of that kind of relationship counselling and kind of household relationships support, we can bring together a call on that and think about what are the digital solutions around that. So that the next steps are really thinking about kind of what are the big themes, whether it's about the tech or whether it's about the kind of social purpose that you're specifically working in, and how we bring together people to look at these solutions fairly quickly. John, I don't know if you've got any other stuff to add to that.
Yeah, I think just to emphasise that there will be another call like this. I mean, we're going to